It started like any other winter in Oak Ridge Heights, a seemingly perfect little suburb where every lawn was neatly trimmed, every mailbox uniform, and every resident terrified of the HOA. I had moved there for the quiet, for the isolation from the city, and for the snow, the real kind that blanketed everything in a soft white layer that muffled the noise of life. I wasn't expecting war, especially not from a homeowners association that fancied itself an army of moral police with clipboards instead of rifles. But apparently, my Snowmelt system had been the spark that lit the powder keg. I had installed it last year after a brutal December had left my driveway, a treacherous sheet of ice. The system was simpler, network of channels and underground heating pipes that directed melting snow safely into the drainage ditch behind my property. I had followed every city code, every technical specification, and even consulted a professional engineer. By morning, my driveway was dry, and my neighbors' cars weren't sliding into each other like toys. For the first winter, no one complained. But the HOA never forgot, and they never forgave. By January, the first letters came. Not emails, not polite suggestions, but formal, aggressive notices demanding that I cease and desist all water diversion practices and threatening fines of thousands of dollars per day. I laughed the first time I read it, thinking maybe they'd made a mistake. But then the second letter arrived, thicker, more scowling in tone, with photographs supposedly proving that my Snowmelt was illegally encroaching upon common property. The common property in question was literally the street in front of my house. It was as if they expected snow to respect invisible HOA boundaries. I tried to reason with them. I attended the monthly HOA meeting, a stuffy affair where the board sat in a semicircle like a tribunal, their faces frozen in artificial authority. Your system is creating water hazards, they claimed, causing erosion. It's unsafe. It's unsightly. I pointed out that I was diverting water from my property into a ditch designed for drainage. The ditch doesn't count. One woman hissed, her glasses sliding down her nose. We don't approve of how it looks. It violates community aesthetics. That was the official complaint. Aesthetics. Ice in winter, flooding in spring, swerving cars, all forgivable, apparently. But how my melted snow looked as it flowed into the ditch was apparently a crime against civilization. They escalated fast. A week later, I came home to find a bright orange barrier blocking my channel at the curb. Heavy steel beams, planks nailed together, and even a small sign, "Stop unauthorized water diversion." My neighbors, a mix of smug observers and terrified housewives clutching their latte cups, watched curiously as I examined the barricade. It was clear the HOA had moved from passive-aggressive letters to full-blown sabotage. I spent hours assessing the situation. I didn't want to break any laws myself. That was their trap. But the snow wasn't going to wait. It kept falling, inch after inch, and the blocked channel meant that the melt had nowhere to go. I tried talking to them again, calling the president on the phone, leaving polite but firm voicemails. No answer. I even emailed their attorney, outlining the legality of my system, the drainage permits, and the potential consequences of tampering with private property. The response was a single line: remove the channel or face escalating penalties. By Friday, a blizzard hit Oak Ridge Heights. The wind whipped through the street, bending trees, scattering debris, and blanketing the neighborhood in 2 feet of snow. My driveway remained functional, but the street in front of my house became a river of slush and melting snow, blocked from its normal flow by the HOA's barricade. I watched as the water pooled, inching toward the cars parked along the curb. At first, I was tense, watching homeowners rush out with towels and shovels, trying to redirect the melt. But then I remembered the letters, the threats, the illegal blockade, and a cold, calculating idea began to form. By nightfall, the water had risen several inches. I didn't touch a thing. I simply sat in my warm house, watching through the frosted window as the temperature dipped and the snow continued to melt into the trapped puddles. The HOA had made their move, but they hadn't considered the natural consequences. Gravity and water don't negotiate with bureaucrats, they just act. Around midnight, it began. The first car shifted slightly, a heavy sedan sliding toward the middle of the street. Its owner, likely asleep or thinking the ice was just a harmless layer, didn't notice until the metal shrieked across the asphalt. Then another, a compact SUV, nudged against its neighbor. A chain reaction of sliding vehicles began to form. The street, once pristine, transformed into a floating parade of cars, bobbing and rocking in the shallow water. By morning, Oak Ridge Heights was a scene of chaos. Cars floated down the street like tiny arcs, their owners scrambling in slippers and bathrobes, yelling at one another and at the HOA officials who were now arriving, panicked. The barricade had done its job. It had stopped the snowmelt, but in doing so, it had created a mini-flood, and the HOA had unwittingly trapped every car on the street in a watery trap. I stepped outside with a mug of coffee standing on my dry driveway and watched the spectacle. The HOA president, a small man with a permanent scowl, was wading through the water, clutching a clipboard that had been soaked and rendered useless. This is unacceptable," he shouted, flailing at the air. I waved casually, pretending to sip my coffee, enjoying every second of their panic. Emergency crews were called, neighbors called friends, and bystanders began filming the surreal scene. I could see the headlines forming already. HOA mishap causes neighborhood flood. No one could deny the cause. It was obvious. The barricade blocked the snowmelt, and the natural consequences had followed. I made no moves to help or hinder nature. The HOA's arrogance had sealed their fate. By the time the water receded, a dozen vehicles were damaged. Some floated onto lawns, others stranded in strange angles against mailboxes and fences. The HOA had to apologize, pay damages, and remove the barricade immediately. Legal action followed, with my lawyers calmly presenting permits, engineering reports, and photographs showing that the system was completely compliant. In the end, the HOA learned an expensive lesson about meddling in things they didn't understand. Their cars had floated, their authority had been undermined, and the community now whispered about the Great Oak Ridge flood for years to come. I, on the other hand, continued to enjoy my winter wonderland, my driveway dry, my snowmelt system flowing freely, and my coffee hot as I watched the chaos from a safe, elevated perch. There was something poetic about it, the universe, winter, and water conspiring against bureaucracy. In Oak Ridge Heights, you could control lawns and mailboxes and petty rules, but you could not control physics. And physics, as I had learned, was on my side. The HOA never tried to block my snow melt again. They were too busy rebuilding credibility, repairing cars, and quietly paying fines. I, however, installed an even more robust system designed with a small feature I called the natural consequence channel, which ensured that any future attempts to interfere would result in minor but satisfying chaos. Winter after winter, the snow came and the melt flowed. The street remained as it should, clear, safe, and under the watchful eye of someone who respected nature's laws more than HOA letters. Oak Ridge Heights returned to its quiet routine, but I would occasionally glance at the street during a thaw, a small smile crossing my face. The memory of floating cars, frustrated neighbors, and a small bureaucratic army, humbled by water, reminded me of one simple truth. Sometimes the best way to win is to do nothing at all and let the world do the work for you. We will, we are, we will, we, so we are, we, you, we, so we, you, I, you, And so, my snowmelt system became legendary, a quiet rebellion against control, an engineering marvel, and a testament to patience and foresight. Oak Ridge Heights would never forget the year their arrogance met gravity, water, and snow, and lost spectacularly.